My name is Martin Kauble, local piano teacher in Longview, Washington, and today I'm pleased to present young pianist Abriana Church. Say hi, Aubrey.
Hi.
And Aubrey is quite a successful young pianist who is now studying at a music conservatory, the Masters University, and has prepared a program for us which we would deem as called a salon recital. Now, a salon recital, it was usually in the homes of people that were well-to-do. They would have a musical instrument. Typically, it would be the piano in there, and guests would come over, and there would be a performance, say, from a pianist of note, and that would play, for the people and the guests to enjoy. It was like the entertainment of the day. And so it would not be uncommon for Franz Liszt or the likes of Frederic, Chopin to appear in a salon and give a nice concert. Well, that's kind of the basis for today. We've gone through this COVID situation, and live performances have taken a hit from this. So we decided, well, why don't we go ahead and get Abriana here in my salon and do a recital, all works by Franz Liszt. So where does this come from? Well, looking at history, we go from the classical period of 1700s into what's called the Romantic period of the 1800s. And during this time, the piano began to rise to the top of the music instrument ladder. It was the darling and the medium by which pianists would perform and establish themselves. Some composers and pianists were more conservative. Chopin was always known as the pianist's pianist, very refined works during that same time period. Liszt's works also refined, but a little more on the dazzling side, we could say. Yeah. And he was known as the public's pianist. He was known as really the first matinee idol, and he would give these concerts, and they would be received by many, many people, and they would leave these recitals, concerts, as if they just encountered something beyond this world. He had an amazing technical virtuosity and abilities, and he wrote pieces accordingly to show off those abilities, but also writing deep music in the process. So during the Romantic period, music turned out to be more like personal documents of art. They were very, very personal. They didn't really adhere to any certain strict rules like they did in the classical period. So that made things a little different. So it allowed composers and pianists to have a little more freedom. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Liszt was one of the first to open up a lot of these new forms, some of which are on the program today, and he was also doing other things like taking composers that were known or relatively unknown, and he would transcribe their works for just solo piano, bringing it to a wider audience.
Yes, he brought it to the public. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and what an amazing thing. And that, in a lot of ways, too, kind of made him almost like a musicologist in a way, because he was bringing these things to the general public, and they could, it was like getting the hay out of the loft, throwing it on the ground where we all could eat it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And this was an age of also showmanship and certain virtuosity. Liszt, he was responsible for turning the piano sideways.
And he was inspired by a violinist, actually.
Who was?
Niccolo Paganini.
Yes, Niccolo Paganini. Well, just looking a little bit at Niccolo Paganini, history describes him as a striking man, gaunt, tall, with hollow cheeks, pale skin, and thin lips. Now, what made him so special? Well, he was an absolutely amazing violinist, and so much that he would stun his audiences with his incredible playing. So he dressed in black. Sometimes he wore little rectangular blue spectacles, and he would fly about on stage, and he actually became known as Rubber Man. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yeah, he earned the nickname back then as Rubber Man because he would flail about like this. It's also rumored that Niccolo Paganini sold his soul to the devil in return for his abilities to perform on the violin like that.
Although he would always claim that his powers came from God, but the public.
Oh, the public. Yeah, that's how it is. That's the Hollywood, right?
Right.
It was even rumored that Paganini actually killed a woman, imprisoned her soul in his violin, and used parts of her intestines for an endless supply of gut for his strings. Now, really, but that was the rumor back then, and he, it helped him make him famous, I guess. But
the public loves
always does stuff like that.
These stories.
So Paganini wrote this set of pieces called Caprices to demonstrate his abilities, and Franz Liszt transcribed 6 of them for the piano. Franz Liszt was very, very influenced by Paganini. He went to a concert, saw Paganini, saw what he was doing, and said, well, I think I can do that at the piano. Well, he did.
Yeah, he did, and he even surpassed Paganini in his popularity. Transforming the piano and inspiring people to become figures of the public with their instruments, He was kind of like the first rock star.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. More than Elvis.
Yeah, at the time, right? Actually, my violin friend did not know. I found out in music history class, so there you go. But she knows who Liszt is.
Well, there we go.
Paganini.
Yeah, it transcends the years. So, the set of 6 Paganini etudes, all of them are extremely difficult. Etude means study. Okay, so these are pieces, that's the French word, and these are pieces designed you have to get past the technical difficulties to let the music speak.
Yeah.
And the 6th one on the program, the 6th Paganini etude, it's a set of variations on a theme, correct?
Correct.
Would you demonstrate for us the main theme of that 6th one? It's very recognizable, very famous theme.
Yes, so it's very simple, but it just has a sort of pattern to it that works extremely well for variation, and it goes like this. You've probably heard that before because many other composers used it.
Yep, Rachmaninoff.
Yeah, that was probably the most famous.
There you go. Yeah, if you remember, there was a movie Somewhere in Time, and in that one, the theme came out in there. But what it was the famous variation done for orchestra and piano, a set of variations by Sergei Rachmaninoff. But he took that theme and turned the whole thing and did it upside down, and that's how he came out with that theme. But anyway, the 6 Liszt Paganini etudes, and which one of these do you think would be your favorite?
Oh, geez, I was not expecting that. Well, La Campanella is very special.
The Little Bell.
Yes.
Which has a 3-handed technique that Liszt developed as well.
Yeah.
Sounds like 3 hands playing, 1 up here and 2 down here.
I also love the first one. It has a sense of grandeur, and just majesty. I don't really get tired of just hearing it, because of this really cool atmosphere.
Oh, and it's a great opener, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
it's
it is
best.
a great opener.
Yeah.
So, Liszt Paganini etudes as performed by Abriana Church. next two pieces on the program are two of a set of 6 pieces called the Consolations. And this is kind of fun because this was actually, I sent a copy of the Liszt Consolations to Abriana as a Christmas present. And
Yeah.
bless her heart, she learned the first 2 for this performance. So, but Consolations. So we're going from Liszt, this flamboyant, showman,
Yeah.
to now something a little more subdued, but it still has Liszt written all over, right?
Yeah, you can hear that. I would say even more in, well, no, I was going to say more in the second, but I take that back because the first, it's very almost religious, meditative.
He was also a religious.
Mm-hmm.
He took minor orders, and became an abbé.
And that went far back to even his childhood. He, from a child, wanted to be involved in the church.
That's interesting.
So, even though there was Liszt as this crazy public figure,
he was known as Mephistopheles in a cassock.
Yeah,
or Abbé Liszt also. Mm-hmm.
So you hear this side of him in the first one. Then the second one, it just really flows into the second. It's in the same key, and it just works with this theme, and it brings it in different keys. You hear it modulating and different kind of textures. So
now we're starting to talk about something called thematic transformation. Yes, well, only Liszt, right? But taking a theme but making it its own entity, and it would go through different key changes and get developed that way too.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a copy here of what was the original publication of the Liszt Consolations. And there was a little write-up about these in a little review in a newspaper then from 1850. And I have to read this because this is, it's typical of the Romantic period style of writing.
It's just so
Isn't
over
it,
the
though?
top and
I know, it is.
extreme.
Great. So the review of this reads in part, Dear reader, have you never known those dismal hours in which pain tormented your ailing heart, in which you sought in vain to calm its beating, and in which no comforting words of a friend succeeded in bringing consolation and joy? Whenever you heard a distant music, or when you set yourself at your instrument and the soothing, lulling chords caressed your ear and penetrated into your heart, then you must have felt the almightiness of the divine art of music. Mm-hmm. And listened with aching rapture to the tones. And when the last tones ebbed away and vanished, your bitter pain was relieved and freed itself in the soothing balsam of tears. Oh, who at some time has never experienced music as a heavenly consolation, even if a consolation in tears. Let us then welcome the latest work by the master Liszt, who bestows upon us under the title Consolations a wreath of noble tone poems, so heartfelt, delicate, and genuine, and at the same time so artlessly beautiful that only few music lovers would have ever dared to imagine them from the hand of the triumphant world conqueror Franz Liszt. Yeah.
Wow.
And now the Liszt Consolations numbers 1 and 2. the next piece on the program is it's. I'm not really sure how it would fit in the history of Liszt. It's sort of maybe it's one of those, like they're sometimes called wood shavings off of the master craftsman's table, and there would be these pieces that are obscure and weren't part of other big sets of works like the Paganini etudes or the transcendental etudes or whatever. This one is a solo piece. I don't speak French, but I believe it's Feuille d'Album.
That's how I've heard it.
There you go. Or even I think it's translated as an album leaf.
Yes.
There you go. So Aubrey found this piece. I had never heard it before, and it's wonderful. What brought you to this? How did you find it? What brought you to this?
Yeah, well, because I'm doing All-Liszt, you need to have variety in a program that's only one composer. So I was looking, just to see what I could find out there. And there's this channel on YouTube of somebody who just loves Liszt and posts all Liszt music. And I either found it through that channel or just looking at the works of Liszt and going through them and finding it that way. And I heard it, and it's so charming.
It is.
It's so charming, right?
I can see why you chose it, because I love it.
Yeah, and yet nobody hears it. Nobody knows. You would not imagine it's Liszt. You would think, maybe just, not quite Chopin, but
if I heard it on a program as an encore, I don't think I could identify who the composer was. Now I can.
Right.
How would you describe this piece in form? Is it a dance? Is it a song? What do you think it would be?
It's kind of a waltz because it's in 3, and yet I don't know that it would have been danced to at the time, or if, kind of like we're doing a salon recital, I imagine this would be so popular as a salon piece.
Yeah, as a note here, the contemporary of Liszt, Frederic Chopin, he wrote his famous waltzes, but they were not to be danced to. They were about the waltz and the dancers, right? Mm-hmm. So there you go. Probably not enough room in this living room anyhow.
Yeah, let's not try.
I can't even do the bunny hop.
And it's Easter too.
So there you have it. But yes, a charming work, and I'm grateful to you for bringing it to my attention, because I don't think I would have ever known of this piece. So good for you. Nice job.
Good.
Next on the program, we have a transcription. So Franz Liszt, as mentioned earlier, would transcribe pieces from other composers and to bring them to the public. And a composer that we all have probably heard about at some point in time, Franz Schubert, German. And although Schubert wrote a number of marvelous pieces for the piano, he's more noted for his Lieder, Lieder, German, or his songs. They were song cycles. And there's still, I mean, you and I talked about it, whether this song cycle, but it was about the lovely Miller's daughter, Die schöne Müllerin. And that one, it's a cycle either of 20 or 21 pieces, but I don't know, whoever's going to correct Wikipedia at some point is probably going to change it, right? But that's okay. How about if we correct it?
We were arguing. I thought it was 21. He thought it was 20. So
yeah, but I'm always right. But anyway, these pieces, though, during that time, Schubert wrote the accompaniments for these, and the accompaniments were as important. So they were almost programmatic. If we think of works of Debussy, Reflections on the Water, Wind of the West, what the West Winds are, they portray that. And so you have this underlying accompaniment figure that isn't just like, chord boom, chuck, boom, but like with the brook. And there's the water flowing beneath it. Yeah,
definitely. It's he did such a good job at text painting with these pieces.
I like that. Yeah, text painting.
Yeah. So
there you go.
Right.
So and so he transcribed from the set of songs, the lovely Miller's daughter, and as it goes, I'm going to read a little of this, but you have more on me than this one, okay, from the text. But these pieces they move from optimism and cheer to sometimes some despair and tragedy. So the story is there's a young journeyman, Miller, okay, that wanders through the countryside, and he comes upon a brook, which he follows to a mill. And he then falls in love with the beautiful Miller's daughter. I mean, who wouldn't, right? And
classic story, gotta have
it is
love story and tragedy and everything else.
The first soap operas.
Right.
But she is out of his reach because he would be viewed as sort of a simpleton or just a no count, right? So he tries to impress her, but her response, all this sort of stuff. But then his own affections are supplanted, right, by another guy that comes along, right?
Which is a hunter that comes to the mill.
And he is clad in what color?
Green.
Now, that's not jealousy. So why is he clad in green?
That is actually the miller's daughter's favorite color. So, she, of course, falls in love with him. And we can imagine what happens to the young journeyman Miller.
Well, he becomes obsessed with the color green. Yeah. And then there's some fantasy of death where flowers sprout from his grave. He dreams this thing or to express his undying love. And then, but in the end of this piece, of this transcription.
This transcription itself is.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So it's at the end of this whole story. So it doesn't tell that whole story, but it's at the end, and it's the part of the story where the journeyman Miller goes back to the brook, and the brook is the theme throughout the whole cycle, because in the beginning, he was following the brook to the mill where he found the miller's daughter, and through the story, he keeps going back and dialoguing with the mill as far as how things are going. If one day he thinks that the miller's daughter maybe is showing some interest in him, and so he goes and tells the brook. And
see, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, so the brook is very prevalent in this story.
So we can't blame the daughter. We can just blame the brook for all the problems, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
So does that mean it was a babbling brook? Sorry.
Maybe so.
And so?
So he goes back to the brook. At the end in this piece, Der Müller an der Bach, and you could say it better in German, right?
I don't think I could have done, but you did very well.
Okay, well, I'm getting better. I'm learning from you.
Right on.
So, and that means the Miller and the Brook, because he's having this last conversation with the Brook, and I have part of the first part of it. I know he says, "Oh, little Brook, do you know what true love can do to you?" Then the Brook tries to comfort him after he's telling his woes, and there's this beautiful middle part that's really happy, and the Brook is saying, well, when there's no problems, love is beautiful, and the angels come down to earth, and all this. And then he says, "Oh, Brook, dear little Brook, you mean so well, but you don't know what it's like.
Yeah,
you don't know." And then he says, "Oh, and I yearn for the coolness of the brook."
And how does the piece end, with a huge flashing chords and all that, or how does the piece actually end?
Yeah, no, you just hear kind of the rumbling of the brook in the distance, and it doesn't end with the singer necessarily, but it ends with the brook going on, because he says he's decided to end his pain in the brook, and in the meantime he says, sing on to the brook, sing on, sing on. So
Did you want to show us a little part of that?
Yeah,
Great.
You just hear at the end the brook just murmuring on you.
And that's interesting to me too, because I see that this is in G minor. But it ends with that major chord. So a lot of times in music history, that almost seemed like hope and redemption coming out of despair. Now, I don't know why that, maybe just gentle peace, do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I know, it's really interesting because, this was a tragedy, and yet at the end, we have a major chord.
Yeah.
And, so right, it could be that he finally, his soul was at rest, it's...
Maybe we'll never know.
Maybe not, and it seems to, sometimes I think after something terrible happens, yet when you look out at nature, you still hear the birds singing, and it almost seems like nothing happened, something terrible happened, and yet the nature just is so peaceful and goes on, and the sun keeps shining, and I think that's kind of a thing. He says, "Sing on, Brook, sing on."
See, maybe there's that hope, that idea.
Yeah,
no matter
it's
the despair.
Right.
Interesting
to ponder, anyways.
Yeah. So if any of you have any ideas, you can feel free to write to me, and see if we can correct Wikipedia on that, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
The final piece on the program is Liszt's 12th Hungarian Rhapsody. In all, he wrote 19. Are we agreed on that one?
You're solo. I have not checked Wikipedia lately.
It's 19. There were two periods. They were composed during 1846 through 1853, and then later in 1882 and 1885. So this was kind of an ongoing thing. What's interesting about this, though, is there are what we call ethnomusicologists. So those are people who study the music of other cultures. One famous one was Béla Bartók, who studied the music of the Hungarians. Well, here you are before that. So Franz Liszt actually has been considered one of, if not the first, ethnomusicologist, native to his own country, Hungary.
Hungary, right.
All right. These are based on Hungarian folk tunes. These were gypsy folk tunes that he heard and grew up with.
Yeah.
He lived nearby a gypsy encampment.
Yeah, and they would also just wander through the towns of the Hungarian, countryside. So I think every so often they would be passing through the town or the area where he lived. And as a child, he would just be fascinated by this because he was, obviously drawn to music from a very early age, and they were such interesting people and so colorful.
Yeah.
And as a kid, what kid would not be?
I would have been captivated.
Yeah.
I say, take me with you. And they have that influence around you at that time. I mean, my word, and in person.
Yeah.
Not pressing a button, but it's right there, and you get all the instruments. There was native instruments to the gypsies also, and he would try to reproduce sounds like that on the piano. And the interesting part about this too, now there are different things that happen with the themes. Again, we could call it variations or his thematic transformation. But there were two basic things that had to do with these dances, if you call them, or whatever. Now, what's a rhapsody? Well, it's sort of like a fantasy. They're going off on a tangent, with pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. I think of it like it's an adventure, a rhapsody.
Oh, yeah.
It just because it goes here and there. It's always changing. It's an adventure, and there's kind of like you could imagine a story behind it very easily.
Muchly. And there's a lot of use of something called the gypsy scale. I haven't researched that.
Oh, yeah. I know a little bit about it. Yeah, so...
What do you know? Do I have to pay for this lesson?
We'll discuss that afterward. So, it's based on a regular harmonic minor scale.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so, it has the lowered sixth and raised seventh.
That's the harmonic form.
So you've got that augmented second in there.
Yeah.
And then the gypsy scale adds in another augmented between the third and fourth degrees. So you have...
So my students that work on that harmonic minor, they've been making that mistake on purpose.
There you go. You'll say, hey, are you part Hungarian or gypsy or something?
I might just let us say, hey, you did a good job. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just learned it. This is a recent discovery of mine. So, thank Dr. Bloomfield in history class. We're going through world music and learning all these amazing new cultures.
I do know that basically in the rhapsodies and these there were two types of tempos. The slower tempo was called la sang. The fast tempo, the frisca. Now, would you think that'd be more like the dance part of it, I wonder?
Maybe. At least probably the frisca would.
I would think it's the dance.
Yes.
So there's lulling in there that's going on.
And maybe gypsy violin,
Right.
Really, just straining and wailing out there.
And then the frisca where they go into the wild dances and all that. And I know either on TV or somewhere, even on Bugs Bunny cartoons, right? I've seen the gypsies on there and all this stuff too, but that's the history of that. So what caused you to, just for enders here, it's a fabulous piece, all right?
Oh,
And I've heard
yeah.
you perform it a couple times. But what drew you to this one?
Yeah, well, there's so many good rhapsodies. I could have easily gone with the Sixth, or, I thought
very
about...
famous.
Yeah, that one is all the octaves.
Which, I call you Madam Octave.
Yeah, so someday we'll
your
do
octaves.
that. I also found the 10th very interesting. It's one of the less popular ones, but it's just very unique and grabbed my attention. But I just listened through all of them. Whenever I choose a piece, it's a process, unless sometimes I know the piece from before and I just know, I'm ready to do that piece now.
Yeah.
But this piece, I had heard it before. I had listened to it growing up, but that wasn't why I chose it necessarily. I listened to just all the rhapsodies, knowing I wanted to do rhapsody, and narrowed it down to, maybe half a dozen, and kept chopping it up and, okay, now I'll make it half of that, whatever. And I kind of settled on this one. I think in particular, probably one of the middle themes, that's my favorite, probably just won me over. It's...
There you go.
Yeah,
images of
love
Fiddler
it.
on the Roof or something. But it's true. You hear that gypsy scale, and that it's almost that the aching of the heart, isn't it?
It's very.
We don't want to feel.
passionate.
We don't want to feel too good just yet. But what drew me to this piece, before we get into the performance of this piece, was the opening. The opening of it is what sucks me in, and I'm like, wow, Could we hear just some of the opening?
Oh, it's so dramatic and intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's.
Well, I know I was watching the piano go chicka 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 chicka, and all this. By the way, before you came, I had the piano tuned. A shout out to my piano technician in Portland, Dan Nisus, wonderful. And because of this Liszt recital and all you've done, I will be sending you that bill for the tuning.
Okay, so I'm not going to be checking my mail in the next
You're
few
not.
weeks.
No. Aubrey, it's been okay. So it's been great having you, and
it's so good, so much fun. This
there we go.
Amazing.
Right on. So the 12th Hungarian Rhapsody.
Here we go.
In tune.